in design and construction, we will see various criteria which are used to construct or various elements which may be gauged in order to construct some kind of corpus. Any corpus is usually made or collected to study a language, and therefore whenever we collect a corpus, we need to see that either it is fulfilling the criteria or the purpose for which it is being collected or not. Every corpus may have a different element of a language or various elements of a language, or may have a different purpose. Some corpus are developed specifically for certain research purposes, and they usually and sometimes are not used later on for any other purpose. So, and some corpus are of some kind of permanent nature. They exist on websites, and we can always use them for multiple purposes for various kinds of research. So it depends for what purpose we are constructing a corpus. Therefore, the purpose and the nature of language which is involved in developing a corpus should always be kept in mind. A corpus occasionally, usually all corpus represent the purpose for which they have been selected. But sometimes it is possible that a corpus may not represent what is expected, or may represent what is not expected. But a good user of corpus and collector of corpus should be mindful of such deviations, and he should take special care that such deviations may not affect his or her research results. Generally speaking, there are certain considerations which are usually kept in mind while selecting a corpus. For example, the orientation of the language which is being used to make a corpus, or a kind of either it is a complete language or a variety of a language. For example, a corpus may be based on native varieties, for example, British English, American or Australian English, or it could be based on certain varieties which are prospering in second or foreign language context, like Indian English or Pakistani English, Singaporean English. So a corpus may be based on the native variety or any other variety. And then the criteria on which we will choose samples should be very clear and updated, and should be relevant to the purpose of the study or the purpose of the collection of the corpus also. Then the nature and dimensions of the samples should be clear. For example, either a corpus would collect all kinds of users of language, or would restrict itself to certain kinds of the users of language, or could be any other dimension. So it should be very clear to the collector of the samples for a corpus that what kind of dimensions would be most relevant for the purposes of a corpus. In order to determine a corpus, the first thing of a criteria is to have a very clear criteria. If a collector of a corpus or the maker of a corpus do not have clarity about the criteria on which he or she or any organization is collecting a corpus, there would always be confusions, and even future possible beneficiaries would not benefit from such a corpus in a fruitful way. Certain common criteria for selecting a corpus may include the mode of text, whether the text is written or spoken, or sometimes as nowadays it's very common, either it is based on some electronic or social media text. So it should be very clear that which nature of language is being used to make a corpus. Then type of text, for example, if written, whether the corpus would include a book text or a letter text or formal writings text or any other kind of text. So the type of the text is also very important along with the nature of the text. Then domain of the text, for example, the text which is being used for the corpus belongs to academic world, or it is a popular text or any other form of text. Then the language or languages varieties of the corpus should also be kept in mind. As I said earlier, It includes native variety, local variety, or even within local or native varieties, any further sub-variety. So variety should be very clearly defined to the reader. Then location of the text, where that variety which or the language which is being used for making a corpus belongs to. For example, in case of English, if there is a corpus of native speakers of English language, whether those speakers belong to UK or USA. Similarly, if we are taking samples from L2 context, whether they belong to a particular context, for example, Singaporean, English, Indian, or Pakistani, or any other context, then the date of the text is also very important in some selections. What was the date of the sample or broader era of the collection of the sample, because that would help us define and analyze various aspects of the making of a language. Then we must keep in mind that the criteria for selecting samples for a corpus should be very simple and should be explained in an easy manner to the reader. The more complex the criteria would be, the more difficult it would become to find samples or to fit in a certain group of texts. And all informations should be clearly defined and should be conveyed clearly to the reader, or any kind of smaller or bigger deviation, maybe grammatical or punctuational deviation from the normal criteria of the text should be clearly conveyed to the reader, and such data preferably should be stored separately and may be used later on when it is needed. So, in nutshell, we can say that a corpus should have a clear design and construction, and the criteria used for the construction of a corpus should also be clearly defined to the readers.